Chapter 9 Power and Arms. The Hispaniola lay some way out, and we went under the figureheads and round the sterns of many other ships, and their cables sometimes grated underneath our keel, and sometimes swung above us. At last, however, we got alongside, and were met and saluted as we stepped aboard by the mate, Mr. Arrow, a brown old sailor with earrings in his ears and a squint. He and the squire were very thick and friendly, but I soon observed that things were not the same between Mr. Trelawney and the captain. Hang on, I've got a smudge on my glasses, and that's going to drive me insane if I don't clean them, which I should have done already. There we go. This last was a sharp-looking man who seemed angry with everything on board and was soon to tell us why, for we had hardly got down into the cabin when a sailor followed us. "Captain Smollett, sir, axing to speak with you," said he. "I am always at the captain's orders. Show him in," said the squire. The captain, who was close behind his messenger, entered at once and shut the door behind him. "Well, Captain Smollett, what have you to say? All well, I hope, all shipshape and seaworthy?" "Well, sir," said the captain. "Better speak plain, I believe, even at the risk of offense. I don't like this cruise, I don't like the men, and I don't like my officer. That's short and sweet." "Perhaps, sir, you don't like the ship?" inquired the squire, very angry, as I could see. "I can't speak as to that, sir, not having seen her tried," said the captain. "She seems a clever craft, more I can't say." "Possibly, sir, you may not like your employer either," says the squire. But here Dr. Livesey cut in. "Stay a bit," said he, "stay a bit. No use of such questions as that but to produce ill feeling. The captain has said too much, or he has said too little, and I'm bound to say that I require an explanation of his words. You don't, you say, like this cruise? Now why?" "I was engaged, sir, on what we call sealed orders, to sail this ship for that gentleman where he should bid me," said the captain. "So far, so good. But now I find that every man before the mast knows more than I do. I don't call that fair, now, do you?" "No," said Dr. Livesey, "I don't." "Next," said the captain, "I learn we are going after treasure. Hear it from my own hands, mind you. Now, treasure is ticklish work. I don't like treasure voyages on any account, but I don't like them above all when they are secret, and when, begging your pardon, Mr. Trelawney, the secret has been told to the parrot." "Silver's parrot?" asked the squire. "It's a way of speaking," said the captain. "Blabbed, I mean. It's my belief neither of you gentlemen know what you are about, but I'll tell you my way of it. Life or death, and a close run." "That is all clear, and I dare say true enough," replied Dr. Livesey. "We take the risk, but we are not so ignorant as you believe us. Next, when you say you don't like the crew, are they not good seamen?" "I don't like them, sir," returned Captain Smollett, "and I think I should have had the choosing of my own hands, if you go to that." "Perhaps you should," replied the doctor. "My friend should, perhaps, have taken you along with him, but the slight, if there be one, was unintentional. And you don't like Mr. Arrow?" "I don't, sir. I believe he's a good seaman, but he's too free with the crew to be a good officer. A mate should keep himself to himself. Shouldn't drink with the men before the mast." "Do you mean he drinks?" cried the squire. "No, sir," replied the captain, "only that he's too familiar." "Well, now, and the short and long of it, captain?" asked the doctor. "Tell us what you want." "Well, gentlemen, are you determined to go on this cruise?" "Like iron," answered the squire. "Very good," said the captain. "Then, as you've heard me very patiently saying things that I could not prove, hear me a few words more. They are putting the powder in the arms in the forehold. Now you have a good place under the cabin. Why not put them there? First point. Then you are bringing 4 of your own people with you, and they tell me some of them are to be berthed forward. Why not give them the berths here beside the cabin? Second point. Hey, Rex, welcome back. Are you trying to be One-Eyed Willie? No, but I love the Goonies. Good reference. Any more? Asked Mr. Trelawney. One more, said the captain. There's been too much blabbing already. Far too much, agreed the doctor. I'll tell you what I've heard myself, continued Captain Smollett. That you have a map of an island, and that there's crosses on the map to show where treasure is, and that the island lies. Then he named the latitude and longitude. Exactly. I never told that, cried the squire, to a soul. The hands know it, sir, returned the captain. Livesey, that must have been you or Hawkins, cried the squire. It doesn't matter who it was, replied the doctor, and I could see that neither he nor the captain paid much regard to Mr. Trelawney's protestations. Neither did I, to be sure, he was so loose a talker, yet in this case I believe he was really right, and that nobody had told the situation of the island. Well, gentlemen, continued the captain, I don't know who has this map, but I make it a point. It shall be kept secret even from me and Mr. Arrow. Otherwise, I would ask you to let me resign. I see, said the doctor. You wish us to keep this matter dark, and to make a garrison of the stern part of the ship, manned with my friend's own people, and provided with all the arms and powder on board. In other words, you fear a mutiny. Sir, said Captain Smollett, with no intention to take offense, I deny your right to put words into my mouth. No captain, sir, would be justified in going to sea at all if he had ground enough to say that. As for Mr. Arrow, I believe him thoroughly honest. Some of the men are the same. All may be for what I know, but I am responsible for the ship's safety and the life of every man Jack aboard of her. Man Jack, let me see. That's in here. Jack or Jack Tar is a common nickname for sailors. Here is simply an emphatic way of saying every man. Okay. I see things going as I think not quite right, and I ask you to take certain precautions or let me resign my berth, and that's all. Captain Smollett, began the doctor with a smile, did you ever hear the fable of the mountain and the mouse? You'll excuse me, I dare say, but you remind me of that fable. When you came in here, I'll stake my wig you meant more than this. A reference to a line from Horace, which speaks of a mountain bringing forth a mouse. Oh. Doctor, said the captain, you are smart. When I came in here, I meant to get discharged. I had no thought that Mr. Trelawney would hear a word. No more I would, cried the squire. Had Livesey not been here, I should have seen you to the deuce. As it is, I have heard you. I will do as you desire, but I think the worse of you. That's as you please, sir, said the captain. You'll find I do my duty. And with that he took his leave. Trelawney, said the doctor, contrary to all my notions, I believed you have managed to get 2 honest men on board with you, that man and John Silver. Silver, if you like, cried the squire, but as far as that intolerable humbug, I declare I think his conduct unmanly, unsailorly, and downright un-English. Well, says the doctor, we shall see. When we came on deck, the men had begun already to take out the arms and powder, yo-ho-hoing at their work, while the captain and Mr. Arrow stood by, superintending. The new arrangement was quite to my liking. The whole schooner had been overhauled, 6 berths had been made astern out of what had been the after part of the main hold, and this set of cabins was only joined to the galley and forecastle by a sparred passage on the port side. Okay, I know what the galley is. The galley is the kitchen. The forecastle is the forward part of a ship where the sailors have living quarters. Wait, no, that sounds like a berth. Oh, that's what they say, okay. It had been originally meant for that. The captain, Mr. Arrow, Hunter, Joyce, the doctor, and the squire were to occupy these 6 berths. Now Redruth and I were to get 2 of them, and Mr. Arrow and the captain were to sleep on deck in the companion, which had been enlarged on each side till you might almost have called it a roundhouse. Okay, now they lost me. Oh, the companion is the stairway leading from the deck to the cabin of the ship. A roundhouse is the uppermost room or cabin on the stern of the ship where the ship's master stayed. Okay. Very low it was still, of course, but there was room to swing 2 hammocks, and even the mate seemed pleased with the arrangement. Even he, perhaps, had been doubtful as to the crew, but that is only guess, for as you shall hear, we had not long the benefit of his opinion. We were all hard at work changing the powder at the berths, when the last man or 2, and Long John along with them, came off in a shore boat. The cook came up the side like a monkey for cleverness, and as soon as he saw what was doing, "So ho, mate," says he, "what's this?" "We're a changing of the powder, Jack," answers one. "Why, by the powers," cried Long John, "if we do, we'll miss the morning tide." "My orders," said the captain shortly. "You may go below, my man. Hans will want supper." "Aye, aye, sir," answered the cook, and touching his forelock, he disappeared at once in the direction of the galley. Forelock is the lock of hair that grows from or falls from the forehead. Here Silver touches it to show respect to the captain. Ah, like a salute. "That's a good man, Captain," said the doctor. "Very likely, sir," replied Captain Smollett. "Easy with that, men, easy." He ran on to the fellows who were shifting the powder, and then, suddenly observing me examining the swivel we carried amidships, a long brass 9. Okay, a swivel is a small cannon turning on a pivot, a brass 9-pound gun that shoots 9-pound shots. "Here, you ship's boy," he cried, "out of that! Off with you to the cook and get some work." And then as I was hurrying off, I heard him say quite loudly to the doctor, "I'll have no favorites on my ship." I assure you I was quite of the squire's way of thinking, and hated the captain deeply. Chapter 10. The Voyage. All that night we were in a great bustle, getting things stowed in their place, and boatfuls of the squire's friends, Mr. Blandley and the like, coming off to wish him a good voyage and a safe return. We never had a night at the Admiral Benbow when I had half the work, and I was dog-tired when a little before dawn the boatswain sounded his pipe, and the crew began to man the capstan bars. I might have been twice as weary, yet I would not have left the deck. All was so new and interesting to me. The brief commands, the shrill note of the whistle, the men bustling to their places, and the glimmer of the ship's lanterns. "Now, Barbecue, tip us a stave," cried one voice. Stave in music is the same as staff. The whole phrase here is a slang expression meaning "give us a song." "The old one," cried another. "Aye, aye, mates," said Long John, who was standing by with his crutch under his arm, and at once broke out in the air in words I knew so well. 15 men on a dead man's chest." And then the whole crew bore chorus, "Yo ho ho," and a bottle of rum. And at the third ho drove the bars before them with a will. Even at that exciting moment, it carried me back to the old Admiral Benbow in a second, and I seemed to hear the voice of the captain piping in the chorus. But soon the anchor was shored up. Soon it was hanging, dripping at the bows. Soon the sails began to draw, and the land and shipping to flit by on either side. And before I could lie down to snatch an hour of slumber, the Hispaniola had begun her voyage to the Isle of Treasure. I am not going to relate that voyage in detail. It was fairly prosperous. The ship proved to be a good ship, the crew were capable seamen, and the captain thoroughly understood his business. But before we came the length of Treasure Island, 2 or 3 things happened which require to be known. Mr. Arrow, first of all, turned out even worse than the captain had feared. He had no command among the men, and people did what they pleased with him. But that was by no means the worst of it, for after a day or two at sea, he began to appear on deck with a hazy eye, red cheeks, stuttering tongue, and other marks of drunkenness. Time after time he was ordered below in disgrace. Sometimes he fell and cut himself. Sometimes he lay all day long in his little bunk at one side of the companion. Sometimes for a day or two he would be almost sober and attend his work, at least passably. In the meantime, we could never make out where he got the drink. That was the ship's mystery. Watch him as we pleased, we could do nothing to solve it. And when we asked him to his face, he would only laugh if he were drunk, and if he were sober, deny solemnly that he ever tasted anything but water. He was not only useless as an officer and a bad influence amongst the men, but it was plain that at this rate he must soon kill himself outright, so nobody was much surprised, nor very sorry, when one dark night, with a head sea, he disappeared entirely and was seen no more. A head sea is a sea in which the waves run directly against the course of the ship. "Overboard," said the captain. "Well, gentlemen, that saves the trouble of putting him in irons." But there we were without a mate, and it was necessary, of course, to advance one of the men. The boatswain, Job Anderson, was the likeliest man aboard, and though he kept his old title, he served, in a way, as mate. Mr. Trelawney had followed the sea, and his knowledge made him very useful, for he often took a watch himself in easy weather. And the coxswain, Israel Hands, was a very careful, wily old experienced seaman who could be trusted at a pinch with almost anything. Coxswain. Oh, coxswain. An officer of the ship often in charge of steering. In this book he is a fictional character. In real life, Israel Hands was a pirate best known for being second in command of Blackbeard's ship. He was a confidant of Long John Silver, and so the mention of his name leads me on to speak of our ship's cook, Barbecue, as the men called him. Aboard ship he carried his crutch by a lanyard round his neck, to have both hands free as possible. It was something to see him wedge the foot of the crutch against a bulkhead, and propped against it, yielding to every movement of the ship, get on with his cooking like someone safe ashore. Still more strange it was to see him in the heaviest of weather cross the deck. He had a line or two rigged up help him across the widest spaces, Long John's earrings they were called, and he would hand himself from one place to another, now using the crutch, now trailing it alongside by the lanyard, as quickly as another man could walk. Yet some of the men who had sailed with him before expressed their pity to see him so reduced. "He's no common man, Barbecue," said the coxswain to me. "He had good schooling in his young days, and can speak like a book when so minded. And brave, a lion's nothing alongside of Long John. I seen him grapple 4 and knock their heads together, him unarmed." All the crew respected and even obeyed him. He had a way of talking to each and doing everybody some particular service. To me, he was unweariedly kind, and always glad to see me in the galley, which he kept as clean as a new pin, the dishes hanging up burnished, and his parrot in a cage in one corner. "Come away, Hawkins," he would say. "Come and have a yarn with John. Nobody more welcome than yourself, my son. Sit you down and hear the news. Here's Captain Flint. I calls my parrot Captain Flint, after the famous buccaneer. Here's Captain Flint predicting success to our voyage. Wasn't you, Captain?" And the parrot would say with great rapidity, "Pieces of 8, pieces of 8, pieces of 8, till you wondered that it was not out of breath, or till John threw his handkerchief over the cage. Now that bird, he would say, is maybe 200 years old, Hawkins. They live forever mostly, and if anybody's seen more wickedness, it must be the devil himself. She's sailed with England, the great Captain England, the pirate. She's been at Madagascar and at Malabar and Suriname and Providence and Portobello. She was at the fishing up of the wrecked plate ships. Okay, hang on, that's interesting. First one was England. Edward England was a famous pirate of the first part of the 18th century. Madagascar is the famous rendezvous for pirates of the Indian Ocean. The Malabar coast is the name given to the southwestern coast of British India. Suriname was Dutch Guyana. Old Providence, formerly St. Catherine, an island off the eastern coast of Nicaragua, the scene of Captain Morgan's first operation. Portobello is a port on the eastern coast of the Isthmus of Panama, which was sacked by Captain Morgan. The wrecked plate ships were Spanish treasure ships from America. In 1702, the fleet was sunk to prevent the English from seizing the treasure on board. Cool. It's there she learned pieces of 8, and little wonder 350,000 of them, Hawkins. She was at the boarding of the Viceroy of the Indies out of Goa. She was, and to look at her, you would think she was a baby, but you smelled powder. Didn't you, Captain? Okay. A ship really named Nossa Senhora de Cabo, seized by pirates. And Goa is the capital of the Portuguese possessions in India. Stand by to go about, the parrot would scream. Ah, she's a handsome craft, she is, the cook would say, and give her sugar from his pocket. And then the bird would peck at the bars and swear straight on, passing belief for wickedness. There, John would add, you can't touch pitch and not be mucked, lad. Here's this poor old innocent bird of mine swearing blue fire, and none the wiser, you may lay to that. She would swear the same in a manner of speaking before a chaplain. And John would touch his forelock with a solemn way he had that made me think he was the best of men. In the meantime, the squire and Captain Smollett were still on pretty distant terms with one another. The squire made no bones about the matter. He despised the captain. The captain, on his part, never spoke but when he was spoken to, and then sharp and short and dry, and not a word wasted. He owned, when driven into a corner, that he seemed to have been wrong about the crew, that some of them were as brisk as he wanted to see, and all had behaved fairly well. As for the ship, he had taken a downright fancy to her. Shall I appoint nearer the wind than a man has a right to expect of his own married wife? Sir, but, he would add, all I say is we're not home again, and I don't like the cruise. What does that mean? That is, we'll sail almost against the wind with the angle between the wind and her course very small. The squire at this would turn away and march up and down the deck, chin in air. A trifle more of that, man, he would say, and I shall explode. We had some heavy weather, which only proved the qualities of the Hispaniola. Every man on board seemed well content, and they must have been hard to please if they had been otherwise, for it is my belief that there was never ship's company so spoiled since Noah put to sea. Double grog was going on the least excuse. There was duff on odd days. For instance, if the squire heard it was any man's birthday, and always a barrel of apples standing broached in the waist for anyone to help himself that had a fancy. Okay. Yeah, double grog is a double portion of rum. Noah was the first voyage made. What's duff? A sort of plum or paste pudding boiled in a bag and eaten with molasses, often only eaten on Sundays or special occasions. Broached in the waist. Oh, the middle part of the ship, okay. Never knew good come of it yet, the captain said to Dr. Livesey. Spoiled forecastle hands make devils, that's my belief. But good did come of the apple barrel, as you shall hear, for if it had not been for that, we should have had no note of warning, and might all have perished by the hand of treachery. This was how it came about. We had run up the trades to get the wind of the island we were after. Run up the trades. The trade winds, which blow constantly in the same direction during certain seasons of the year. I am not allowed to be more plain, and now we were running down it, for with a bright lookout, day and night, it was about the last day of our outward voyage by the largest computation, sometime that night, or at latest before noon of the morrow, we should sight the treasure island. We were heading south-southwest, and had a steady breeze abeam and a quiet sea. The Hispaniola rolled steadily, tipping her bowsprit, now and then with a whiff of spray. All was drawing low and aloft. Everyone was in the bravest spirits, because we were now so near an end of the first part of our adventure. Okay. A beam is all at right angles of the ship. The bowsprit is a large spar running out from the forward end of a ship. Aloft is all sails filled. Okay. Now, just after sundown, when all my work was over and I was on my way to my berth, it occurred to me that I should like an apple. I ran on deck. The watch was all forward, looking out for the island. The man at the helm was watching the luff of the sail, whistling away gently to himself, and that was the only sound excepting the swish of the sea against the bows and round the sides of the ship. Okay, the luff is a nautical term of several meanings, here apparently for the distension of the sail. In I got bodily into the apple barrel, and found there was scarce an apple left, but sitting down there in the dark, what with the sound of the waters and the rocking movement of the ship, I had either fallen asleep or was on the point of doing so, when a heavy man sat down with a rather clash close by. The barrel shook as he leaned his shoulders against it, and I was about to jump up when the man began to speak. It was Silver's voice, and before I had heard a dozen words, I would not have shown myself for all the world, but lay there trembling and listening in the extreme fear and curiosity, for from those dozen words I understood that the lives of all honest men aboard depended upon me alone. Chapter 11. What I heard in the apple barrel. No, not I, said Silver. Flint was captain. I was quartermaster, along of my timber leg. The same broadside I lost my leg, old Pew lost his deadlights. It was a master surgeon, him that amputated me, out of college and all, Latin by the bucket and what not, but he was hanged like a dog, and sun-dried like the rest at Corso Castle. That was Robert's men, that was, and come of changing names to their ships, Royal Fortune, and so on. Now what a ship was christened, so I let her stay, I says. So it was with the Cassandra, and brought us all safe home from the Malabar. After England took the Viceroy of the Indies, so it was with the old Walrus, Flint's old ship, as I've seen amuck with red blood, and fit to sink with gold. Okay, quartermaster is the second highest position on pirate ship and had numerous responsibilities. Along of my timber leg, on account of my timber leg. Yeah, that's what I figured. Ah, cried another voice, that of the youngest hand on board, and evidently full of admiration. He was the flower of the flock, was Flint. Davis was a man too, by all accounts, said Silver. I never sailed along of him. First with England, then with Flint. That's my story. and now here on my own account, in a manner of speaking, I laid by 900 safe from England, and 2,000 after Flint. That ain't bad for a man before the mast, all safe in bank. 'Tain't earning now, it's saving, does it? You may lay to that. Where's all England's men now? I don't know. Where's Flint's? Why, most of 'em on board here, and glad to get the duff. Been begging before that, some of them. Old Pew, as had lost his sight, and might have had thought shame, spends £1,200 in a year, like a lord in Parliament. Where is he now? Well, he's dead now, and under hatches. But for 2 year before that, shiver my timbers, the man was starving. He begged, and he stole, and he cut throats, and starved at that, by the powers. Okay, Captain Bartholomew Roberts was a famous pirate killed fighting the English. Captain Howell Davis, a daring pirate. Hatches are openings on the ship's deck, so under hatches means below deck, but here is used to mean buried. Well, it ain't much use after all, said the young seaman. "'Tain't much use for fools, you may lay to it, that nor nothing," cried Silver. "But now you look here, you're young, you are, but you're smart as paint. I see that when I set my eyes on you, and I'll talk to you like a man." You may imagine how I felt when I heard this abominable old rogue addressing another in the very same words of flattery as he had used to myself. I think, if I had been able, that I would have killed him through the barrel. Meantime he ran on, little supposing he was overheard. "Here it is about gentlemen of fortune. They lives rough, and they risk swinging, but they eat and drink like fighting cocks, and when a cruise is done, why, it's hundreds of pounds instead of hundreds of farthings in their pockets. Now the most goes for rum and a good fling, and to sea again in their shirts. But that's not the course I lay. I puts it all away, some here, some there, and none too much anywheres, by reason of suspicion. I'm 50, mark you. Once back from this cruise, I set up gentlemen in earnest. Time enough too, says you. But I've lived easy in the meantime. I've never decided myself own nothing. Heart desires, and slept soft and ate dainty all my days, but when at sea. And how did I begin? Before the mast, like you. Well, said the other, but all the other money's gone now, ain't it? You daren't show face in Bristol after this. Why, where might you suppose it was? Asked Silver derisively. At Bristol, in banks and places, answered his companion. It were, said the cook, it were when we weighed anchor, but my old missus has it all by now, and the spy-glass is old, least sent goodwill and rigging, and the old girl's off to meet me. I would tell you where, for I trust you, but it'd make jealousy among the mates. And can you trust your missus? Asked the other. Gentlemen of fortune, returned the cook, usually trust little among themselves, and right they are, you may lay to it. But I have a way with me, I have, when a mate brings a slip on his cable. One as knows me, I mean. It won't be in the same world with old John. Let's go his cable, sailor slang for die. Oh. There was some that was feared of Pew, and some that was feared of Flint, but Flint, his own self, was feared of me. Feared he was, and proud. They was the roughest crew afloat, was Flint's. The devil himself would have been feared to go to sea with them. Well, now, I tell you, I'm not a boasting man, and you've seen yourself how easy I keep company. But when I was quartermaster, lambs wasn't the word for Flint's old buccaneers. You may be sure of yourself in old John's ship. Well, I tell you now, replied the lad, I didn't half a quarter like the job till I had this talk with you, John, but there's my hand on it now. And a brave lad you were, and smart too, answered Silver, shaking hands so heartily that all the barrels shook, and a finer figurehead for a gentleman of fortune I never clapped my eyes on. By this time I had begun to understand the meaning of their terms. By a gentleman of fortune, they plainly meant neither more nor less than a common pirate, and the little scene that I had overheard was the last act in the corruption of one of the honest hands, perhaps of the last one left aboard. But on this point I was soon to be relieved, for Silver, giving a little whistle, a third man strolled up and sat down by the party. "Dick Square," said Silver. I think that means trustworthy. Good, honest, and upstanding, yeah. "Oh, I know Dick was square," returned the voice of the coxswain Israel Hands. "He's no fool, is Dick." And he turned his quid and spat. "But look here," he went on. "Here's what I want to know, Barbecue. How long are we going to stand off and on like a blessed bumboat? I've had almost enough old Captain Smollett. He's hazed me long enough, by thunder. I want to go into that cabin, I do. I want their pickles and wines and that." Bumboat is a boat for peddling provisions among vessels in port or offshore. Hazed me. Yeah, well, we know what hazing is. To force another to do disagreeable acts. "Israel," said Silver, "your head ain't much account, nor ever was, but you're able to hear, I reckon. Leastways, your ears is big enough. Now here's what I say to you. You'll berth forward, and you'll live hard, and you'll speak soft, and you'll keep sober till I give the word, and you may lay to that, my son." "Well, I don't say no, do I?" growled the coxswain. "What I say is when. That's what I say." "When? By the powers!" cried Silver. "Well, now, if you want to know, I'll tell you when. The last moment I can manage, and that's when. Here is a first-rate seaman. Captain Smollett sails the blessed ship for us. Here's this squire and doctor with a map and such. I don't know where it is, do I? No more do you, says you. Well then, I mean the squire and doctor shall find the stuff and help us get it aboard, by the powers. Then we'll see. If I was sure of you all, sons of double Dutchmen, I'd have Captain Smollett navigate us halfway back again before I struck." "Why, we're all seamen aboard here, I should think," said the lad Dick. "We're all forecastle hands, you mean," snapped Silver. "We can steer a course, but who's to set one? That's what all you gentlemen split on, first and last. If I had my way, I'd have Captain Smollett work us back into the trades at least. Then we'd have no blessed miscalculations and a spoonful of water a day. But I know the sort you are. I'll finish with them at the island as soon as the Blunt's on board. And a pity it is, but you're never happy till you're drunk. Split my sides, I've had a sick heart to sail with the likes of you." The Blunt's is money, is the treasure. "Easy all along, John," cried Israel. "Who's a crossin' of you? Why, how many tall ships, think ye now, have I seen laid aboard? And how many brisk lads drying in the sun at Execution Dock," cried Silver, "and all of this same hurry and hurry and hurry. You hear me? I sing a thing or two at sea, I have. If you would only lay your course and a pint to windward, you would ride in carriages, you would. But not you. I know you. You'll have your mouthful of rum tomorrow and go hang." Execution Dock is a place in London where criminals were hanged. Nice. "Everybody knowed you was a kind of chaplain, John, but there's others as could hand and steer as well as you," said Israel. "They liked a bit of fun, they did. They wasn't so high and dry nohow, but took their fling like jolly companions, every one." Chaplain is chaplain. Hand and steer is to furl a sail. To hand, reef, and steer are skills of an able seaman. Well, yeah, I figured. "So," says Silver, "well, and where are they now? Pew was that sort, and he died a beggar man. Flint was, and he died of rum at Savannah. Ah, they was a sweet crew, they was, only where are they? Savannah Savannah, Georgia, the British colonial capital of Georgia, now part of the United States. Huh. But, asked Dick, when we do lay 'em athwart, what are we to do with them anyhow? There's the man for me, cried the cook admiringly. That's what I call business. Well, what would you think? Put 'em ashore like maroons? That would have been England's way, or cut 'em down like that much pork. That would have been Flint's or Billy Bones's. Billy was the man for that, said Israel. Dead men don't bite, says he. Well, he's dead now hisself. He knows the long and short on it now, and if ever a rough hand come to port, it was Billy. Right you are, said Silver, rough and ready. But mark you here, I'm an easy man. I'm quite the gentleman, says you. But this time it's serious. Duty is duty, mates. I give my vote. Death. When I'm in Parliament and riding my coach, I don't want none of them sea lawyers in the cabin coming home unlooked for like the devil at prayers. Wait is what I say, but when the time comes, why, let her rip. John, cries the coxswain, you're a man. You'll say so, Israel, head sea when you see, said Silver. Only one thing I claim Trelawney. I'll wring his calf's head off his body with these hands, Dick, he added, breaking off. You just jump up like a sweet lad and get me an apple to wet my pipe like. You may fancy the terror I was in. I should have leaped out and run for it if I had found the strength, but my limbs and heart alike misgave me. I heard Dick begin to rise, and then someone seemingly stopped him, and the voice of Hans exclaimed, Oh, stow that! Don't you get sucking of that bilge, John. Let's have a go of the rum. Dick, said Silver, I trust you. I've a gauge on the keg, mind. There's the key. You fill a pannikin and bring it up. Pannikin. Hold on, that's in here. Pannikin is a tin cup. Stow that is an exclamation of impatience, which means never mind that. Terrified as I was, I could not help thinking to myself that this must have been how Mr. Arrow got the strong waters that destroyed him. Dick was gone but a little while, and during his absence Israel spoke straight on in the cook's ear. It was but a word or two that I could catch, and yet I gathered some important news, for besides other scraps that tended to the same purpose, this whole clause was audible. Not another man of them'll jine. Hence there were still faithful men on board. Jine means join. When Dick returned, one after another of the trio took the pannikin and drank. One to luck, another with a here's to old Flint, and Silver himself sang in a kind of song, Here's to ourselves, and hold your luff, plenty of prizes and plenty of duff. Hold your luff means keep on your course, hold to your purpose. Just then a sort of brightness fell upon me in the barrel, and looking up I found the moon had risen, was silvering the mizzen-top, and shining white on the luff of the foresail, and almost at the same time the voice of the lookout shouted, Land ho! Okay, the mizzenmast is the hindmost mast of a three-masted ship. Here the writer probably meant main top because this ship only has foreign mainmasts. Cool. Well, I gotta stop there because I'm super tired and my vision's blurring.